Hello, readers, and welcome back to Reading in the Middle, the podcast where stories leap off the page and into the hearts of middle grade readers, educators, and book lovers everywhere. I'm your host, Annisha Jeffries. Today, we're venturing into a brand new multiverse with the debut author Raj Sidhu, whose action-packed novel, Thrash Force, is a tailor-made book for kids who love epic adventures, dice rolls, and high-stakes storytelling. This isn't just a book. It's a full-on quest that mixes imagination, humor, and a lot of heart. Raj is here to share how this thrilling world came together, what inspired his characters, and why middle grade readers are the perfect adventurers to take it on. So, let's get started. Hi, Raj. Welcome to Reading in the Middle. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, let's start. When you first started imagining Thrash Force, was there a specific scene, character, or even just a feeling that made you think, this is my story?
Um, I'll tell you what. So I was coming off of a bunch of drafts of a really heady sci-fi novel that I had been trying to wrap my head around, and it was really serious, and I was trying to tackle some really big issues in it, and kind of trying to put my magnum opus out there, and it was zero fun, and I was banging my head against the wall. And I think that when I sat down to write Thrash Force, I don't even know if I intentionally had or consciously had an idea for what was going to happen. I just sort of sat down and started writing, and what came out was this really, really silly, wacky story. The original draft was like 6,000 or 7,000 words long, and I was kind of imagining it maybe as like a kind of Captain Underpants style graphic novel. And so it, it was super slapstick and zany, and I had so much fun with it. And I think what was most fun about it was being able to get it all done in like 2 days. I had this finished manuscript in like a couple of days. It was only like 6,000 or 7,000 words, and I wasn't taking it too seriously. And so what unfolded before me was these kids having a really great time in an alternate universe, just using magic powers like we all dream of having, and getting up to all sorts of mischief.
Yes.
And pulling all sorts of pranks. And so I think that when I set out to write the book, I didn't really know what I was doing or what was going to happen. And by the time I finished that, really preliminary draft, I suddenly understood what it was I wanted to do. So it gave me the opportunity to kind of see the story in its entirety in kind of miniaturized form so that I could go from there.
That must be a great feeling, too, to have the idea of the manuscript, have all this fun ideas, and then it actually happening and coming to life in a book. And you have the book is hilarious, it's fun, and Dungeon Brawl feels so real. Did you base it on games that you've played, or did you build it completely from scratch?
100% the former. So Dungeon Brawl really is mostly a one-to-one of Dungeons and Dragons, kind of an homage, really. And at a certain point, mechanics aside and flavor aside, I think what games like Dungeons and Dragons, or, this fictionalized version, Dungeon Brawl, have in common is that they're just opportunities for people to come together and sit around a dining room table, or, play remotely, whatever your setup is, and just spend time with each other and tell each other a story that you're all working on together. So it was easy to reskin, I guess I would say, as my own thing, because there's just so much established, D&D and the whole meta around it is so well established and so easy to fall into. And it was fun to see what these kids were playing in Thrash Force as well.
Yes, and our listeners, we have a lot of D&D fans out there, and the characters in your story, Riley and his friends, they're all different, but they feel like a real group. How did you decide like who they'd be and how they fit together?
So these like fantasy role-playing games, which are in turn based off of fantasy stories and fantasy literature, there's the kind of archetype of the party, right? The group. And they all have these specialized skills that complement one another and support one another.
Hmm.
I think that there's already that basis, right? It's easy to kind of dip your cup into that well and pull up, oh, here's your kind of magic user, here are your brawlers, here's the more support focused character. Um, so there's that, but then um the characters themselves, who again just sort of, and I'm sure so many people feel this way when they are having fun with a novel that they're writing, but the characters really just sort of sprung out, mostly fully formed,
Hmm.
and who they were complemented the sort of archetypal idea of the adventuring party so well. So we had our ferocious brawler in Georgie, who is a shape-shifting druid, so she turns into you know wolves and bears and tigers, oh my. And there's the goofier, kind of more warm and loving, supportive Jasper, who becomes a bard, because he loves music in real life, but he's also just so good-hearted and cares about his friends really deeply. And then Riley, who's our leading man here in this story, um, is is kind of finding himself to be a fairly cunning, um, kind of person
Hmm.
in real life outside of the game, and so he becomes a cunning sorcerer as well. So a little tricksy, a little underhanded in how he uses his magical powers. And last but not least is Simon, who is our kind of
Hmm.
a little more introverted or nerdy game master, the person who's putting together the whole adventure. And he didn't really he's as the game master, he didn't create a character for himself, so he just kind of got pulled into the first non-player character they encountered, who happens to be this tremendous Minotaur barbarian. And this awkward, kind of scrawny kid inhabits the body of this hulking monster and sort of learns to find himself and find his own height, and bravery within that character as well. So it's to answer your question. I think one, the archetypes are already just so available to draw from, but two, the characters just sort of naturally lended themselves to playing those characters so well as well. So it all worked out really nicely.
And it really did. And then now you have Lord Doomface is a name like you just don't forget. What makes him more than just a funny name, and how did you make him feel like a real threat?
I I love Doomface personally. I had so much fun writing for him and kind of like letting him kind of flow through me a bit. And I think the notion of um the tyrant overlord who has achieved total victory over whatever realm or world that they've conquered, and is just so bored because there's just nothing else to do anymore. They've won every battle. They've defeated every foe. They've totally stamped out, any sense of hope in this world. Now they're like, well, now what? I don't have anything else to do. And for that to just slowly drive him mad and really bonkers over the millennia. It was fun to just sort of imagine what that character's motivations and personality might be like, where maybe he was this once, very imposing, intimidating figure, but now he's just this kind of hedonistic, maybe even a little nihilistic of a figure who doesn't really know what to do with himself anymore. And I think what makes him scary for the kids and for everyone in that world, really, one, there is that latent power behind him where, that's what got him to be this overlord of the realm. And he has this incredible, cosmic power, but also he has the capriciousness of not really having a firm handle on himself anymore, and it doesn't have a whole lot of restraint as a result. So I think that's a pretty scary combo in my mind. If I were the kids, if I were the Riley and the gang, I definitely would have been freaking out too to try to get away from this guy.
I was freaking out while reading the book. I was freaking out. And I was also laughing a lot as well. But it also surprised me with some of those wonderful, caring, heartfelt moments. How did you decide when to lean into comedy and when to slow down for something more serious?
Man, I don't know that I did know how to do it, and I think it took me so many drafts of the story to understand where the beats were, and more so to understand who my characters were. I know that I said that they kind of popped out onto the page almost fully fleshed out. And I think that in a sense that's true, like maybe 80 to 90%, their characteristics and what they talk like and that sort of stuff, the superficial stuff was all right there. And the last 10% took me years to understand a little better and really took me the help of my editor, Liz Kofsnar, to get them over the finish line. I think as my understanding of the characters grew and I went from the superficial to maybe the slightly deeper for each of them, I understood what, their shards of glass were, so to speak, like what it was that made them who they were for better or for worse, and what each of them was struggling with in a certain way. And I know that it's mostly about Riley in this story, but I think just as I spent more time with them over the years, I was able to empathize with each of them a little bit more and put a little bit more of that on the page and kind of hopefully balance the humor and the poignancy there.
Oh, yeah, you really did. There's lots of humor. Did you ever think about, I know Thrash Force is out now, but you ever think about branching off like with some of Riley's friends into like a series? Is that something you're thinking?
I would love to do that. And whether it's in novel form or in prose form or even more visual, I have so many ideas for where I want to take the characters next. And my hope would be to spotlight each of them in the same way that I spotlighted Riley and give each of them, their own adventure uh, to work through whatever, they may be struggling with and to prove themselves to themselves. And yeah, that would be such a hoot for me.
Me too. I would love that. Absolutely love that. On pins and needles for that. Was there a scene you especially loved writing? One that makes you smile when you think about it?
I think their first battle on top of the tower was
Oh yeah.
where I have the most fun, imagining them just kind of stumbling their way into their powers and panicking as they're fighting this rusted undead knight that's unexpectedly sprung to life. And they're all stumbling around and they don't have a grip on where they are, what they're doing yet, or how any of this all works. And it's just bedlam. And they manage to just scrape by the skin of their teeth. And I always have, whenever I imagine that song, I just have a metal song playing in the background, and I just always brings a smile to my face because I feel like that scene kind of, for me, sums up the story of these kids breaking out, trying to figure out what's going on, doing their best to make it through, and inadvertently getting up to some really heavy metal hijinks.
Yeah, totally. That you mentioning that's making me smile as well. But but beneath all the magical chaos, Thrash Force is about friendship and working together. Did you set out to write about those themes, or did they emerge as the story grew?
I think a little bit of both. Um, I think when I set out to write the story, I was maybe just trying to prove to myself that I could write a story, and maybe prove to myself that I enjoyed writing it. And what happened afterwards was, I think, um, was a little more incidental. Where as I was as I was writing it, and I was discovering, oh yeah, actually I do enjoy this, and also, wow, this is really hard. Um, Again, I started to understand the characters a little bit more, and I wanted to have them learn what felt important, which was just um, being honest with themselves, uh, and being honest about who they are, and what they're going through, rather than like putting on a front. And I think in order for Riley specifically to learn that lesson, I think he needed to also learn to trust in his friends, and trust that they're not his friends for what he thinks of himself as. Like, they're not his friends because he thinks he's a really smart kid, or other people think he's a really smart kid or really capable kid. They're just friends with him because they love him. And again, that's the sort of nuance that took me a really long time to figure out, and a lot of help to figure out how to get there.
It's so important because, when younger readers are reading books about friendships, it's very important to know that there's some challenges in stories, but the friendship also is a bond, and a one that lasts, and also a friendship that's almost like a family as well.
Yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. I think I think especially the older I get, the more and more I realize how much community really means, and how truly dependent we are on other people, and how at the end of the day, really this is all about just our relationships with each other. Um, and maybe more so than I realized when I was younger, teenager or a kid, or even older than that. I think the older I get, the more precious my relationships come to me. And um, I think I don't know, maybe sometimes as a kid, thinking about things in that sort of way is like, I don't know. That's a little mushy. That's a little gooey. But I hope some of that made it onto the page in a good way for kids.
Absolutely. Now, you've described your style, your writing style, as feast of metaphors. Do you remember when you started writing that way and why it works for you?
I think that maybe it's somewhat informed by um, my own D&D experiences. Being a dungeon master specifically, you're relying entirely on your ability to describe and narrate things to your players. And so I think that was a really good training ground, um, to being able to um, adequately describe what might be happening in a non-visual sense to an audience. I think that, I don't know, it's sort of just naturally I think that, again, when I was writing my like sci-fi magnum opus, or like, attempting to do that,
Yes.
no, it was so it was so um my writing style was so stark for that. And again, I just wasn't having very much fun with it. And then once I jumped into Thrash Force and like kind of let myself loosen up, what came out was just a lot of really bad puns, and a lot of visual language that I enjoyed a lot putting onto the page. And so I guess that's where I am. I guess I'm just a pun dad at the end of the day.
Right. Now, many of our listeners are young writers. What advice would you give them about taking an idea that feels huge and turning it into a story that they can finish?
Here, here are my thoughts. So I think at first, the mistakes I made were keeping my writing really close to the chest. I didn't want to share anything with anybody because I felt one feels very vulnerable about this sort of thing. It naturally so. And you particularly feel it when it's like, oh, well, you know, this is the one. This is the project I've been dreaming about this whole time, and I have to get it perfect. And I think what I've learned is that you can't attain perfection without getting feedback and without putting it in the hands of other people. And I think what helped me get to that point was having those kind of mini drafts of the manuscript. I think like I got really stuck in a lot of previous writing projects because I didn't know how to pace out my stories. And I would put all of my energy and momentum into the first couple of pages or chapters, and I just hadn't thought about where it would go from there. And so I think, obviously everybody has a different writing style and different tools that work for them or different approaches. What ended up working well for me was firing off quick drafts, getting through the whole story just from a structural sense, and then getting feedback on that from a lot of different people. So I think that would be my advice, is learn how to perform your work and share your work for others, even before it's finished, and especially before it's finished.
Good advice. Thank you. Yeah, not hold it so much to your chest. Let it go, because others, and share, and others can, help you, cultivate your process with writing, your writing style, or however, writing what you're created. So that's wonderful advice.
It was
Okay,
my pleasure. It was hard fought. I don't fault anybody for feeling like you have to hold it close to the chest, because again, it's kind of a mortifying process at first and at the end of the day. And it's definitely a muscle to work to be ready to get feedback. So just start working that muscle.
yeah, you hear that, listeners, young writers? Thank you. Okay, okay, right.
I am. I'm not. What's about to happen?
Yes, it's our lightning round. Our lightning
Okay.
round. So we're about to. Oh, yeah, everybody's excited. So I'm going to ask you some, just some questions, quick answers. First thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Let's do it. Let's go.
A book you loved as a kid.
Ooh, Animor.
Oh, yeah, I love that too. Theme song for Thrash Force.
Oh gosh. Painkiller by Judas Priest.
Nice. Hero, sidekick, or villain, you choose.
Ooh, Sidekick.
Snack of choice while writing.
Boy, the answer is always going to be cookies. Just gotta have that there.
3 words to describe Thrash Force.
Goofy. Um, over oh, over the top is 3 words. Goofy, outlandish. Gosh, fun.
Huh. All right, you did such a great job. Yeah.
Oh wow, I blacked out for a minute there.
Thank you. That was great. Oh my goodness, Raj, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on Reading in the Middle. Your debut novel, Thrash Force, is out now. And listeners, you have to go and get it, whether that's your independent bookstore, your local library. Um, Thrash Force is available, and it's an adventure that's loud, funny, and it's just perfect for anyone who's sat around the table with friends and imagined a world coming to life. Raj, thank you so much for joining me.
This was such a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. And that was Raj Sidhu talking about his debut novel, Thrash Force, a story that proves adventure can start anywhere as long as you're ready to take the first step. I loved hearing about the way Raj infuses his story with humor, teamwork, and the joy of discovery. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you subscribe to Reading in the Middle wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss more conversations with incredible voices shaping middle grade literature. Until next time, keep reading, keep imagining, and keep reading in the middle.